Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Thursday afternoon. I apologize for being a little bit late to the live. We got into a huge, intense debate at the end of the meeting on who should be comeback player of the year. I think it's Joe Burrow. Based off of what he's doing on an individual standpoint compared to what he did last season. So I personally think it's Joe Burrow. Let me know in the comments what you guys think on who the comeback player of the year actually is, but I think it should be Joe Burrow. So we're going to go ahead and get into this podcast. So the first segment, we're going to do some NFL predictions for Thursday night's game. I think this game on Thursday night is probably going to be the best game of the week for the NFL. Then in the second segment, we are going to be talking about the NBA and so far what this season has proven, right? So up until this point, what this NBA season has proven to us. And then in the third segment, I'm going to focus primarily on the Lakers game, talking about LeBron James and the how the Lakers got absolutely pwned by the Miami Heat. Then in the fourth segment, I'm going to be talking about quite possibly the most cursed franchise in the entirety of the NBA, because there was some recent news that ended up coming out with with this team, so I would like to talk about that. And then we obviously have our fifth segment that I reveal at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, something you're dying to share. If you want your comment or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. Click on the $ below the chat box. You can send in your comments and or donations that way, or you can use the link displayed below the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net, to do the exact same thing. Either or really helps the show, and either or makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So with that out of the way, since I am a little bit late, I'm going to try to go through a lot of these as quickly as I can. Well, not as quickly as I can because, we still have plenty of time, but I do want to make sure that I make enough time for schoolwork that I gotta do. Spoiler alert. But regardless, we're going to go ahead and talk about this game between the Lions and the Packers. I think this is going to be the best game of the entire week for week 14 for the NFL, because on Sunday, the Sunday games, you have the Saints going up against the Giants, the Falcons going up against the Vikings, the Eagles going up against the Panthers, Jets going up against Dolphins, Browns going up against Steelers, Raiders going up against the Bucks, Jags going up against the Titans, Seahawks going up against the Cardinals, which could be a really good game, but again, I don't think it's going to be the best game. Bills going up against the Rams, Bears going up against the Niners, and Chiefs going up against the Chargers. Chiefs and Chargers could be a great game as well. And then on Monday, you have the Bengals going up against the Cowboys, which also could shape up to be a really good game. And, I've mentioned a couple of good games, right? But the reason why I think this one is going to be the best one is because it is it's a divisional game, right? The Lions, they hold the number one spot in their division right now, and the Packers right now, they hold the 3 spot. But despite holding the 3 spot, they are still arguably one of the better teams in the entirety of the NFC, talking about the Packers. We all know that the Lions are right now most likely the best team in the NFC. But this is a huge game for the Packers. If they're able to win in this game, then they could move up to second in their division, or even move up to first, I believe. I think that's in their ballpark. Actually, no, just second. They can move up to second in the NFC North right now, because that if they end up winning, then the Lions would be 11-2, and the Vikings, they could potentially end up being 11-2 as well, or the Vikings could end up losing and holding the same record as the Packers. And so far this NFC North has been incredibly competitive, aside from the Bears, because of course. But this is shaping up to be a rather competitive year now for the NFC North. And which team? Actually, the Vikings own the tiebreaker, so it wouldn't necessarily matter in terms of seedings where each of these teams are going to go. But again, this is a very important game for Green Bay because they want to split the series between the Lions, and there's no real better opportunity than in this Thursday night game to be able to do that. I believe that the Lions on the defensive side of the ball are going to be suffering from a little bit of injuries, and this will give, the Packers a little bit of a chance to actually do something on the offensive side of the ball. And Jordan Love, he hasn't been turnover prone in the last few weeks. So, against Miami, they had a really good game. They won 30-17. I will say, however, that I feel like this game was really just, it seemed a little bit closer than what it actually was, but the Dolphins ended up racking up garbage time points, so I don't think it was nearly as close. They played well in the second half, but again, mostly garbage time. Now, Jordan Love, on the other hand, 274 yards and 2 touchdowns, completing 21 out of 28 of his passes. That's a great game. That's also coming off of the game against San Fran, a team that Green Bay historically struggles on, where he also threw 2 touchdowns, but he didn't throw an interception at that either. And let's see, up against the Bears, that was when he threw 1 interception, so yeah, rather shaky, but the last 2 weeks he hasn't been turnover prone. And I think now this would be like everything so far is set up perfectly for Green Bay to try and win against the Lions. This would be a huge win for their season. They already lost to the Lions 24-14, and so looking to split the series is very important for them. Now, unfortunately, this time they're going to be playing in Detroit, which could make things a little bit more hectic and a little bit more difficult because the atmosphere in Detroit is elite. And why wouldn't it be? The Lions, they've been mediocre or terrible for so many years, and now they finally have an incredible team. Fans are going to pop out. Fans are going to go out there and try and be loud and support their team because, they finally can do that. It's been a very long time that they've been able to do that. And so playing in that environment is going to be a challenge in of itself, but if they're able to win this game, then it seems like everything would be looking up for them once the playoffs come around. Because chances are you're probably going to have to see the Lions again in Detroit Stadium again in the postseason if you're looking to make a long run. Again, that's just dependent on how the standings work and whether or not you have to play the Eagles. But this is going to be a very important game for both sides. I've been focusing a little bit more on the the Packers side, but for the Lions side, really, this game is about securing the number 1 spot in the NFC because again, the Eagles, they're going up against the Panthers. So it's a big chance that the Eagles are going to end up winning in that matchup on Sunday. And if you are the Lions, that would mean that if you lose this game against Green Bay, then you're going to be tied with the Eagles. And when you look at the when you look at the schedule that both of the teams have, so after the Lions play Green Bay, they have to play Buffalo. Then they get a pretty solid, an easy one against the Bears, and then they probably get another easy one against San Fran, and then they have to play against the Vikings. Compared to the Eagles' schedule, right? They play the Panthers, then they play the Steelers, then they play the Commanders, who they've already beaten, then they play Dallas, who is terrible, and then the Giants, who are also terrible. So really, the schedule difference between the Eagles and the Lions, the Lions have the more difficult schedule coming up, and the Eagles, they have the easier one. So the Lions really need to win this game if they want to sort of cement their spot as the number 1 team in the entirety of the NFC and secure that first round bye, because having a first round bye is very, very important in some of these football playoffs. Obviously, if you're Dallas, having a first round bye doesn't mean anything. You're not going to win a playoff game regardless. But people like to have that first round bye because why not? And they need it. They definitely do need it. And this would be a very good statement game for the Lions as well, as they would be the heads not just of their division, but probably the favorites to go ahead and make the Super Bowl now. I mean, San Fran isn't in their way to stop them, and really the only other team that is in their way right now is probably the Eagles. And the Eagles actually beat Green Bay in a game this season. So if the Lions are able to, beat them again, like if they're able to beat Green Bay again, then this is just good signs for Detroit going into the future. So I actually didn't say who I thought was going to win this game. My gut I want to say the Lions are going to win, but I am feeling rather confident in Green Bay because of the Lions defense not really being 100% healthy out there. So again, it's all dependent on whether Jared Goff is going to turn into Jared Goof and if the defense is also going to completely goof up. But I want to go, you know what? I'm going to go with the Packers just because my friend is a Packers fan and he he loves Green Bay. So I'm going to go with Green Bay on this one. With that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the second segment where I talk about what this NBA season has proven so far, and I'll be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about some things that the NBA, that this NBA season seemed to have already proven so far, right? So, like what this NBA season has proven so far, that's going to be the second segment. Before I begin, though, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, something you're dying to share, we're all ears. And if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Or you can use the link displayed below the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. And either or really helps the show and makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the second segment. Now, this second segment was inspired by a YouTube channel called Swish Out. I highly recommend you listening to what he's got to say because he does bring up some valid points, and I'm just going to take the topics that he talked about and give my own opinions on it. But again, I just wanted to give credit where credit is due for that. So for starters, we are going to talk about Klay Thompson, right? So leaving Golden State, he probably left in like one of the more embarrassing ways possible. Everyone on the internet was joking about how he missed every single shot in an elimination game, and not to mention how that last season with Golden State was one of his weakest seasons, not just in his career, but like not just with Golden State, but in his career, right? And a lot of people on Golden State and the organization, as well as some of its fans, they didn't really want Klay Thompson to come back. And they didn't really feel like Klay Thompson was worth that extension. I was on the boat where you give Klay Thompson that extension and you give him that money because he did so much for the franchise. And it's only fair, especially considering how much money they gave to Draymond and decided to sell off Jordan Poole and send him over to Washington, or let him walk over to Washington, excuse me. But they did not do that. The Warriors did not do that. They did not give Klay Thompson the money, and so Klay Thompson went into free agency and signed with the Mavs. And I was on the boat that this was just a slump year for Klay Thompson. He could bounce back easily. So far this season, though, I have been proven very wrong. I mean, Klay Thompson, so far it's just been proven that Klay is nothing more than a role player now. And, he's way too inconsistent now than what he was on Golden State. And Golden State knew that, which is why they ended up having to ditch him. So, against Golden State, Klay Thompson played really well. But after that game, Klay shot 6 for 17 against Utah, 4 for 7 against the Spurs, 1 for 11 against the Thunder, 0 for 8 against Denver, and 5 for 12 against Miami. Since that Warriors game, this is some pitiful shooting coming in from someone who is expected to be and talked about as a top 5 shooter in NBA playoff history, as well as arguably NBA history. Because again, this guy Klay used to strike fear in many people's hearts before the final season with Golden State. I mean, he definitely struck fear in my heart. Every time he caught the ball with any sliver of space, I was like, oh crap, he's going to make the three. And now he just seems a little bit too streaky for to be a consistent enough player. So right now he's just a role player, and there's nothing wrong with being a role player, but it's proven so far that Golden State was right to let him go in free agency. Right now on the Dallas Mavericks, Klay is shooting 38% from the field. That is a career low. He's shooting 36% from 3, which is fantastic, for NBA standards, but it's also a career low. For his standards, it's not that fantastic. He's also averaging 13 points per game. Again, a career low. His usage rate is also at a career low, which might explain his production and why there is, or lack thereof, and his field goal attempts are also at a career low, but there is a reason for that. It's because right now he is nothing more than a role player for the Dallas Mavericks, and right now he is nothing more than a role player for the rest of his career. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's just what Klay Thompson is right now, and it's really unfortunate to see this because, I was really high on Klay Thompson. I thought he was going to have a bounce back, but did not happen. So that's what this season has proven. And now we're going to go into the another big topic, the Timberwolves. And so far, I believe that this season has proven that the Timberwolves have absolutely no idea what direction they want to go and how to handle an organization. I genuinely think this is sort of how it's going. Now, Anthony Edwards, he is on his second contract with the Timberwolves right now. And once his contract with the Timberwolves expires, that would mean that he is most likely going to enter into his prime. That's what a lot of athletes do in the NBA at around 26, 27 years old. They usually enter into their best years in their basketball career. Now, given all of this, the Timberwolves have to impress Anthony Edwards. They absolutely have to impress him if they want him to stay. Especially, this team is not a big market team. He can easily walk. And we've seen it with Donovan Mitchell. When the Utah Jazz weren't impressing him, which ironically also had Rudy Gobert on the team, they ended up scrapping the whole thing, and he ended up joining Cleveland. When Anthony Davis wasn't happy with the Pelicans and how they were handling the situation, he wanted out and he went to the Lakers. All of this happens now in the NBA. And this trade that the Timberwolves made, trading away Karl-Anthony Towns, who was Anthony Edwards' friend on the roster, after making a Western Conference Finals appearance, is one of the dumbest moves I have ever seen in NBA history. It's almost as bad as when the Timberwolves traded for Rudy Gobert. Oops, both teams are the same team is involved in bad trades. Oh my goodness. Wow. And it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would you make that trade? Your team was winning. Why would you bother signing for Julius Randle, who, by the way, has proven to be a defensive liability on the court? As much as Karl Anthony Towns has been a defensive liability for the Knicks right now, when he was on the Timberwolves, the defense was incredible. So, last year, their opponents' points per game, they held them down to the fewest, which ranked them at number 1. This year, they're at 9. Their defensive rating was number 1 last year. This year, they're at 12. Their opponent field goal percentage was held to one of the lowest in the entire NBA, so they were ranked at number 1. This year, it's 19th. And a big part of that is Julius Randle and his defense. I mean, if you watch him on the court, sometimes he's cherry-picking down the court, not even trying to play some defense. And there are other times where he's just incredibly lazy on defense. Like with Karl Anthony Towns, while his defense is a little bit weak, he wasn't entirely lazy. And with the combination of Rudy Gobert at the center, it seemed like it was working when no one thought it would. But now they decide to end up trading him. And what makes things worse is that while they ended up losing Karl Anthony Towns, they ended up losing three-point shooting. Now, the Timberwolves last season, they were third in three-point shooting percentage with 38%. Majority of their players, McLaughlin, Mike Conley, Karl Anthony Towns, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they were all shooting around 40% from three, which was a big reason why their three-point percentage was amazing. And Anthony Edwards shot 35% from three, which isn't bad. Now, it's almost the complete opposite. Anthony Edwards is shooting 42% from three, which is by far the best on his team. And the rest of the players on the team, Dante DiVincenzo, 32% from three. Naz Reid, 37. Julius Randle, 33. Jaden McDaniels, 28. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 46. Now, Anthony Edwards is the better shooter, in my opinion, because he's taking them at a much higher clip. He is shooting way more three-pointers this season than he ever was before. Last year at the rim, 23% of his field goal attempts came at the rim, and 34% came from the three. He had a very good balance of shooting mid-range shots, which is why people were calling him the next Michael Jordan. Now, 52% of his field goal attempts are three-pointers. But now, that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that this is a bad thing because he's making these shots. But it doesn't seem like the Timberwolves have enough team balance now. It seems like it's more or less just Anthony Edwards doing his stuff. And you can't really impress a player going into his prime to convince him to stay if these are the moves that you're making. Anthony Edwards is one of the highest points per game scorers in this season, averaging 28 points per game. The only players higher than him are Giannis, LaMelo, Jokic, SGA, Anthony Davis, Paolo Banchero, Tatum, and Luka Doncic. Now, aside from that, he is leading the rest of the NBA in points per game. LeBron James isn't even on this on the top points per game list, obviously. But amongst all of those players, he is dead last in free throw attempts. Now, it doesn't matter because, again, he is making these shots. But you cannot convince a player of his caliber to stay on a low market team if this is how you're going to handle the situation. And they only have control of one draft pick in the future because of this Karl Anthony Towns trade. So I don't think this trade was a good move at all. I think Anthony Edwards in the future is going to end up walking. And what this has proven so far is that the Timberwolves have no idea what direction they want to go in. And they have no idea how to run this organization. But that is just me. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. There's so much more that I could talk about. The 76ers being mediocre, actually less than mediocre. The Miami Heat, for some reason, trying to run it back again and again and again and again when it hasn't even worked in producing what they want. And there's so many things that I can go over, but we would be here forever. So with this segment out of the way, I'm going to go into a short break, and then we're going to go ahead and talk about the Lakers game, primarily about LeBron and his performances against the Miami Heat, despite the Miami Heat completely beating them. We're going to talk about all of that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the Lakers. But before I do want to bring it to some people's attention, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this real quick. So, Adrian Woj, the guy who used to be responsible for a lot of tweets, reveals that he has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. And sending our thoughts and whatever religion it is that you guys believe in towards him. This is very sad news. I expect the next Woj bomb is going to be that Woj bomb has beaten this cancer. But cancer stinks. It really does. And him being I think this was revealed 52 minutes ago, and I did not see this up until now. And it's just really sad news I wanted to bring up. And some more sad news. Gervonta Tank Davis announces that he is going to be retiring from boxing after 2025. So again, more sad news. Hopefully, I am praying that LeBron is not next on this retirement list. I am praying that he's not, but so far, it might end up being that case based off of how LeBron has been playing recently. And speaking of LeBron, we might as well go ahead and get into this game against the Miami Heat. Again, just have send in your thoughts to about Woj, and let's hope that he has a very good recovery, and he can actually beat this cancer. But this Lakers game. So in this game, there was some positives. In fact, the only positive in this game was LeBron, right? Because of course, and as you guys probably paid attention to a couple segments ago. If you guys tuned into the podcast from yesterday, then you know that LeBron has been on one of the worst shooting slumps of his entire career. Excuse me. And actually, no, it wasn't. I don't think it was in the segment yesterday. I think it was in a couple of segments before that. But LeBron has been shooting the ball abysmally from the court. It was the worst stretch of his entire career since his rookie season. But in this game, he seemed to have it. Well, it would seem that he completely snapped the Kyle Korver curse. Now, what is the Kyle Korver curse? Well, essentially, whenever they tie Kyle Korver in 3-point shots made, they always tend to struggle a little bit trying to get past him. So this is exactly what happened to LeBron. He went 0 for 24 from 3 after tying Kyle Korver with 3-pointers made. And now in this game, he finally passed him, going 1 for 4 from 3. Again, he made that 3-pointer, but then he missed the rest of the other threes that he ended up taking. So maybe that was just maybe the streak is going to continue with him missing, and that was just the one 3-pointer that he needed to pass him. I have no idea. Regardless, in this game, he ended with 29 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds, and shot 12 for 18 from the field. Way more efficient than what we saw from the last few weeks and the last few games coming in from LeBron. Way more efficient. So it seems like that was just a little bit of just a slump. And it's normal for players to have this kind of slump. It's normal for a 40-year-old to struggle shooting the ball because he's 40 years old. It's normal. People are making a big deal out of it, like saying that, oh, LeBron is terrible. Oh, LeBron is playing bad. He is 40. And I saw somebody on the internet like saying they use LeBron as being 40 as a to boost him in conversations, and they also use it as an excuse. Of course it's going to be a boost, and of course it's going to be an excuse. I did not see Udonis Haslem dropping triple doubles at age 40, but I also would not expect Udonis Haslem to play well at age 40. So that's why it's both a boost and an excuse. And again, it really sounds like I am just, fanboying over LeBron. But do you really expect a 40-year-old to play at the level that he's playing? And do you really expect a 40-year-old to not decline from playing how he's playing? It just does not make sense to me, like, why people are being so harsh on a 40-year-old. Like, it makes sense that the decline is happening. It makes sense. Like, what? Did you expect LeBron to be good 24/7? We completely ignore Michael Jordan and his time on the Wizards, but we're not going to ignore this with LeBron? That is just unbelievable, in my opinion. But in this game, the Lakers played horrible. Outside of LeBron and Roy Hachimura, the Lakers were absolutely horrible in this game. They lost 134-93 to the Miami Heat. This is an embarrassing loss. And Tyler Hero just completely torched the Lakers in the entirety of the third quarter. He made like 7 straight three-pointers in the third quarter, ended with 31 points, played only 27 minutes, was by far their best player on this on the Miami Heat for the night. Jimmy Butler, he ended with 17 points and ended with 8 for 12 from the field. But again, this game was all Tyler Hero. And the rest of the Lakers, they just shot horribly. They shot 5 for 22 from 3, which is absolutely terrible. Nobody on the Lakers roster made more than 1 3-pointer, which is like, you're not going to win a game just by shooting like that. And Anthony Davis has plummeted. Again, it's a pattern. I don't understand what this is, but it is a pattern with Anthony Davis. He is so frustrating. Like, he starts out the season on MVP caliber numbers, right? Then he just gets comfortable, and then he starts playing like this. I don't understand what's up with Anthony Davis, but he is such a frustrating player. It's like, try hard. Why is it that you need the internet to beg you and bully you and forcing you into playing hard? It does not make any sense to me, and that's what it feels like is going on, because in this game, he ended with only 8 points, 3 for 14 from the field. He was awful. Only 7 rebounds and 5 assists, no blocks in this game. Awful. And Gabe Vincent, also awful. 3 for 11 from the field with 9 points. I know it sounds like I'm being like really harsh on these players, and I don't mean to be like, I'm not trying to criticize them. But again, these performances, I can't sugarcoat these kinds of performances. They are bad. There's no way around it. D'Angelo Russell, 5 for 13 from the field with 12 points. Most of the key players on this team ended up taking more shot attempts in this game than points scored in this game. Dalton Knecht, 1 for 4, only 2 points. Armel Traore, 1 for 5, 4 points. Let's see. There was no Austin Reeves in this game, which probably wouldn't have helped matters either. But again, this was a terrible performance for the Lakers. Absolutely awful. Dalton Knecht playing awful. Again, he's a rookie, so I don't want to put too much stress on him because, again, like, you don't really expect any kind of rookie to be, especially in this draft class, you aren't really expecting many rookies to be outstanding and amazing in this league right now. But this is just an awful game coming in from the Lakers. And I thought the Lakers were going to win, especially against the Miami Heat. But this was just disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Miami opened out outscoring them 34-26. Then they outscored them again in the second quarter, 35-26. And then again in the third quarter, 36-20. And then again in the fourth. The game was never ever close. And a majority of this game was garbage time. And I mean, Tyler Hero was the best player on the court in this one, outside of LeBron James, because, I mean, he came out with the win, 9 for 16 from 3. And Bam Adebayo, he played pretty solid as well, 6 for 8, 14 points. Terry Rozier, 6 for 11, 16 points. And it's just like, what on earth is this? Also, Kevin Love played very well in this game, too. 4 for 7 with 10 points. Again, for his age, that's impressive. But the Miami Heat, they shot 57% from the field and 51% from 3. Meanwhile, the Lakers, as a team, shot 42% from the field and 22% from 3. Again, you're not going to be able to win a game when the opponent is shooting like that and you're shooting like this. Just not going to happen. But that's all that I really wanted to talk about, bring attention to in this segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment where I talk about a team that is quite possibly the most cursed team in all of NBA basketball. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we're back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm going to be talking about the team who, in my opinion, might be one of the most cursed franchises in all of the NBA. Now, when you think of cursed franchises, like, one team that immediately comes to mind is the Los Angeles Clippers. And there's a lot of merit into that conversation. So, for one, they've only had one Western Conference Finals appearance since they've been a franchise. And they've had to deal with all sorts of hardships. I mean, blowing 3-1 leads in the postseason, losing in series where the Clippers are expected to be the favorites, having players like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan not working out, then getting players like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, which was expected to be the best defensive duo best two-way duo, since Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, which is absolutely ridiculous. It was a ridiculous comparison then, and it's even more ridiculous now. But that team was crippled with injuries, and they couldn't really make it that far. And ironically enough, they made it farther without Kawhi Leonard playing in a majority of the playoff games. But that is one of the teams that comes to mind when you think of the most cursed team in the NBA, right? And I mean, not to mention how they ended up trading for Paul George, and it turns out that they had to give up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is probably the best point guard in the NBA right now, one of the best point guards in the NBA, top 2 at the very least. And it's been bad for the Clippers. But I think that it's been even worse for the Pelicans, right? Now, the Pelicans, they're also in this argument for being one of the more cursed teams in the NBA, and I'll explain. So, they had a highly touted pick in Chris Paul, arguably one of the best players in the entire franchise's history. They could not build a team around him, and because of that, Chris Paul ended up getting traded over to the Clippers, right? He was supposed to get traded over to the Lakers, but then that trade was waived because it would have been way too overpowered. If only they did that when the Kevin Durant decided to sign with Golden State. If only, but that's besides the point. So then they get another highly touted pick with Anthony Davis. They could not build a team around him until they ended up getting DeMarcus Cousins. Then once they get DeMarcus Cousins, it's been revealed that he gets injured. I believe it was an ACL injury. It completely sidelined him for the series, and he was no longer the same player that he was either on the Kings or on the Pelicans with his time there. Then, because of this, Anthony Davis forced his way out and ended up getting traded to the Lakers, where he ends up winning a championship. And now, this season, actually no, they got another highly touted draft pick in the NBA with Zion, and we all know how Zion's career has been going so far. Like, I really want him to succeed, but Zion so far, he's just been injury prone, and he hasn't been able to be there for the team when the team really needs him. And it really stinks because, there's somebody else in the chat. Spike Up. Where does Zion end up? New Orleans or moving on? Well, actually, I was going to get into this, but the Pelicans there's a report going around saying that the Pelicans are actually planning on sticking with Zion Williamson as the centerpiece for their team. And again, there's some merit to this, and again, there's also some discourse with this because it's similar to like the Joel Embiid situation. Like, we know Joel Embiid is talented, we know Zion is talented. They just cannot stay on the court for their team long enough and be healthy as often as they need to be healthy for their team to succeed. The difference is that with Joel Embiid, I don't think you're going to succeed regardless whether he's on the court or not, just because of his play style. But Zion is still unproven, and it's still a different story. And a big reason why it's unproven is because of injuries. And it's not just Zion with the Pelicans either. CJ was injured. DeJounte Murray was injured. And now they're one of the worst teams in the Western Conference because they can't stay healthy. And not having Zion on the team just ultimately makes it worse. The team is already lacking a center. So a defensive center, and you need as much scoring as you can. Zion is there to do it, but he's not in these games. It's just you can't. And this trade so far with the Pelicans involving DeJounte Murray is starting to look like a little bit more of a bust until they can make it obviously right now it's a little bit too early to tell, but as of right now it's starting to look like a bust because DeJounte and CJ can't stay on the court. So it's not looking good for the Pelicans, and those are my reasons for why I think they are one of the most cursed franchises in the NBA right now. Well, not just right now, but in the history of its franchise. Because again, the Clippers, they're really close to that argument. They're really close to being that team. But I think the Pelicans, they have other situations as well where it's just like, can't get it done because of this, can't get it done because of that, can't get it done because of injuries or failure to manage a team the way that they want it to. And more focusing a little bit more on Zion and the expectations that the Pelicans have for his future. Apparently, despite the injuries and despite the whispers of him getting traded, or despite the whispers of him signing with a new team, or doubting him and his ability to stay on the court, New Orleans apparently isn't going to be giving up on Zion just yet, according to Shams. Instead, they're going to double down, according to Shams. And the plan is to get Zion healthy and build the right pieces around him. And that's really, the Pelicans, they are sticking with Zion. And this could go well, or this could go really, really bad. Because, again, it's rare that we see Zion Williamson healthy in the season, whatever the reason might be, whether it be because Stephen A. Smith thinks he's eating a table, whether it be because he's hurt his ankle, which was a problem in the NBA, not in-season tournament, the play-in games, where he ended up dropping 40 points, but of course ended up getting injured at the end of the game, costing the Pelicans their season. And doubling down on this is extremely risky. Obviously, Zion is one of the most dominant players in the NBA right now. When he's healthy, he is a physical force, and it's very difficult for defenders to really guard him because of how strong he is. But he's only played 6 games this season, and the Pelicans are 4-18. You don't need to, you can easily connect the dots on why they're 4-18. But New Orleans isn't giving up because they can't afford to. Zion is the face of this franchise, and he's basically the key to everything with New Orleans drafting him number 1. But so far with these injuries, it's really it's looking grim. And the Pelicans, even with these injuries, the Pelicans have shown flashes of being contenders when he is healthy. It's just they cannot keep him on the court. They were a top 3 team in the Western Conference last season before Zion went down with an injury. That's what that season right there is sort of, I think, what keeps the Pelicans believing in Zion and believing in his ability to lead the team and actually wanting to build around him. The problem isn't Zion's talent, it's just his availability. the hamstring issues, the conditioning questions, the absences that are happening. Again, rather similar to Joel Embiid and his injuries and just not, well, right now it seems like Joel Embiid just doesn't want to play basketball. I have no idea what's going on over there in Philly, but I haven't seen him step foot on the court in a very long time. And I expect Zion to be a top power forward, top small forward, whichever position he's going to play, most likely power forward. I expect him to be a top power forward when he actually plays in the NBA and when he plays in these games. But how long are the Pelicans going to wait? How long are they going to wait until they finally decide to pull the plug on this guy? It's really unclear, and this could be a mistake. It genuinely could be a mistake, and I don't know like where they would go if this risk doesn't really work out for them. I really don't know. And it's like they have to believe. That's really what the Pelicans are doing. They are believing in their best player. And the Pelicans know that they have a core that they can actually contend with Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and young guys like Herbert Jones, Trey Murphy, and the now aforementioned DeJounte Murray, who we have no idea whether or not he's actually going to stay on the Pelicans. But again, he is a very solid piece to the team. But still, believing is only going to get you so far. And this is a very risky move that the Pelicans are going to take. But it is a move that they're going to double down on and they're going to stick with, which I'm not entirely sure that I agree on. But I think they're one of the most cursed franchises, if not the most cursed franchise. Jeez, my English was awful there. One of the most, if not the most cursed franchises in the NBA right now. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of that take. Do you guys think the Clippers are more cursed than them? Maybe you guys think there's some other team in the NBA that's actually more cursed than them. But that's really all that I have for this segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the final segment, which is just doing a recap of all of the games that went down yesterday and doing some predictions because there's a lot of games that are happening tonight. And I want to get into those NBA games right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this final segment, I am going to be just doing a recap of all of the games that went down yesterday in the NBA, as well as my predictions going into the games that are going down tonight. And obviously, I'm not really going to be tuning into the NBA games as much as I'm going to be tuning into the NFL games because, the NFL game, because I think that NFL game is going to be one of the best, if not the best game of the week. But we'll see because, these Thursday night games, they're like, they don't really pack as much of a punch as you might think. Let's see. Oh, we have someone in the chat. Do you think Magic are true contenders? Good question. I think they can put up a good fight. I don't think they are better than teams like the Knicks, the Cavs, or the Celtics right now. So whether they're true contenders might be it might not be valid for me to say that, but I will say they are playing much better than what I expected them to play, despite not having Paolo Banchero. So maybe when they get Paolo Banchero, then they get into those conversations, but right now, I can't really put my finger on that. I don't really see them beating the Knicks in a series. That might just be bias. I don't really see them beating the Celtics in a series, but I mean, they did take the Cavs to 7 games last year, and the Cavs, they are a contender this year. So it's definitely up in the air. I don't think that that's a crazy question to ask. And based on where their standings are at right now in this season, given the injuries that they have with Paolo Banchero, it's not that bad. I mean, being ranked third in the Eastern Conference without your best player is incredible. And I mean, as you know, while I do think that the Knicks are going to be the better team at the end of the season, the Magic are actually ranked higher than the Knicks right now. Granted, it's because the Magic, they've played a little bit more games, and so that's why they're able to get more wins. But the Knicks, they're trying to figure out the chemistry with the new team that they have with Karl Anthony Towns. So I don't really hold it to the Knicks that they are, not really competing as well in the Eastern Conference as I expected them to. But regardless, the Magic, they definitely have answered the call. Franz Wagner has proven that he is worth that huge contract that I made fun of him for being. Like, I genuinely did not think he was worth all of that money on his contract. But after I saw the Olympic Games and now into this season, he's definitely earned it, and I can see why they ended up giving him all that money. And I apologize. Guilty as charged. But yeah, they could be a very solid team. I don't really think they're going to be able to contend with the Celtics or the Knicks once the season ends, but they could be in that conversation. So I wouldn't throw them out. I wouldn't completely just throw them out entirely. I just don't think so right now. I think it's a bit too early. So going into the games that happened yesterday, the Pacers, they matched up against the Nets. Pretty sure I picked the Pacers to win this one, but the Nets, they ultimately ended up winning. They won 99-90, and Cam Johnson played very well in this game, 26 points. On the Pacers side, Halliburton had only 17. The Pacers are absolutely awful this season, 9 for 14, with the team record. Compared to what they were last season, they've been really, really bad. They did not win a single game in the in-season tournament, despite making it to the finals on the in-season tournament last season. I don't know what's going on with them, but I really think that a big problem with them is their defense or lack thereof. I already talked about the Lakers and the Heat game. Celtics, they ended up beating the Pistons by 10 points, 130-120. Excuse me. And Jaylen Brown ended with 28 points. There was no Jason Tatum in this game, but regardless, no problem. I mean, you're playing the Pistons, so it makes total sense. And let's see. Sam Hauser ended with 20 points. Again, these role players are just phenomenal for the Celtics. It's ridiculous. And on the Pistons side, Cade Cunningham had 27 and 14, almost a triple-double, and of course, he still lost. Tobias Harris, who right now is having a better season than Paul George, by the way, ended with 27 points and 3 rebounds, 2 assists, along with 2 steals to go with that. Malik Beasley, he ended with 23 points as well. And let's see. Next game on this list, the Magic. Speaking of the Magic, they ended up beating the 76ers because, of course, they did. The 76ers did not have Joel Embiid because why would they have Joel Embiid? They only had Maxey and they only had Jared McCain, and they did not even have Paul George in this game. So this 76ers team is by far the most disappointing team of this entire season. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Joel Embiid is a disappointment. I don't understand why he's not playing in a lot of these games. I genuinely do not know because pretty sure he's not injured, but it's whatever, I guess. Jared McCain, he ended with 24 points. Tyrese Maxey ended with 16. And for the Orlando Magic, Franz Wagner ended with 35 points, again, proving that he is worth all of that money. And Jalen Suggs ended with 17 points, 6 assists, and 3 steals along with that, also proving that he's worth that much money. I mean, arguably, but I think Franz Wagner is proving it a little bit more. Now, I picked the Bucks, and once again, the Bucks, they let me down yesterday. One more time. Giannis dropped 31 points and 11 rebounds, and he still lost. Damian Lillard had 25 points in this game, and of course, they still lost. And let's see. They didn't shoot terrible. I mean, Giannis could probably shoot a little bit better from the free throw line. He did go 15 for 26, which is not really that great. But again, it's Giannis. But he should be able to hit his free throws at this point. But, what can you do? 30 points is 30 points. I am not going to harp on him for missing a couple of free throws because it seems like when he needs to make them, he makes them. Remember that NBA Finals game between the Bucks and the Suns? In Game 6, I believe it was, Giannis was like 17 for 17 at the line at one point. He wasn't missing. They needed all of those free throws as well. And for the Atlanta Hawks side, the way I see it, they really cannot be too far from 500. It's the same with the Falcons this year as well. Having Kirk Cousins, it's really like he can never, ever, ever have a season where he goes above 500. Otherwise, there's going to be a pandemic that breaks out. And you guys think I'm crazy for saying that. Well, let me go ahead and pull up the stats. One quick second. Hold on. Kirk Cousins stats. So, we look at his stats, right? Ever since mainly when he was on Minnesota, right? So he was on Minnesota. He started out 8-7, again around 500. Then he has a 10-5 record. This was in 2019. Guess what happens in 2020? COVID. And then afterwards, he goes back on his little stretch, 7-9, and then goes 8-8, misses the playoffs. And then he goes over to 13-4. And guess what happens to him? He gets hurt the next year. Kirk Cousins absolutely cannot be too far away from having a 500 record. And the same thing applies with the Atlanta Hawks as well. It's very weird. It's very weird. But regardless, I love Kirk Cousins. He's such an anomaly. Jesus, I almost mispronounced that awfully. But he is such an anomaly when it comes to these kinds of stats. I really don't understand it. But that's besides the point. And Jalen Johnson, 23 points, 13 rebounds. Zachary Rasacher, probably one of the worst number 1 overall picks in all of the NBA. 12 points, 5 for 12 from the field. Again, just unbelievable how bad the number 1 pick in the draft is right now. I get it. He's still a young player, and we probably shouldn't expect good things to come from him. But again, you are drafted number 1 overall. I do expect a little bit more production coming in from you, and maybe that's because the other French guy, Victor Wembanyama, was already doing this from the jump and affecting a lot of the opinions. But again, it's just it's not a good look. It's really not a good look. But the Timberwolves, they ended up completely destroying the Clippers in this game. Harden was held to just 5 points in this matchup, and he went 1 for 10, 1 for 6 from 3. And that was really the biggest reason why the Timberwolves ended up winning this game, because nobody else really came to play. There was really Norman Powell wasn't in this game, so that's probably another big reason why they ended up losing. 108-80, and I mean Julius Randle, he ended with 20. Anthony Edwards ended with 16, and there was really nothing memorable to really talk about this game because it was just a blowout. There's really no highlights to bring up. So let's go into the predictions for tonight's games, because I'm going to do this a little bit quickly because we are a little bit low on time. The Mavericks, they're going to beat the Wizards. The Knicks, they're going to beat the Hornets. The Houston Rockets are going to beat the Warriors. The Cavs are going to beat the Denver Nuggets. The Thunder are going to beat the Raptors. The Grizzlies are going to beat the Kings. Spurs are going to beat the Bulls. Suns are going to beat the Pelicans. Those are my predictions. I hope I get them all perfect because these games seem like clear-cut winners. So, but now that I say that, some team is just going to end up getting absolutely destroyed, aren't they? But I hope that I get all of them right. But those are my predictions, and that is it for the 5th segment. So thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, something you're dying to share. We are all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You click on the $ below the chat box to send in your comments and or donations that way. Or if Super Chat's not your thing, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net, and you can do the same thing with that link as well. That's all that I have for you today. And before I sign off on the podcast, I got one question for all of you guys. Who do you think is the comeback player of the year for the NFL? I personally think it should be Joe Burrow, but I want to know what you guys think who you guys think the comeback player of the year is going to be for the NFL this year. But aside from that, that's all that I have. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care, stay warm, happy holidays, and who do you think is comeback player of the year? But that's it.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't